or what do you think about Bastion?
It's a kind of jump server.
Correct. It's a jump server, right? So it's a jump server or terminal server. People use different terms to um, okay, jump server or terminal server. So ideally, what generally people do for connecting to the backend environment, they will have a backend subnet. For example, they will have a set of virtual machines running your environment. And in general, you will have a DMZ network, or you'll have a front-end hub network where all the people will connect, and then they will go on to connect the backend systems, right? For example, when you say backend systems, you might have some database servers or app servers and so on. So ideally, we will have the set of jump servers sitting in the front-end subnet, which will act as a connection point for the end users. The end users will connect to the front-end jump server or the Bastion server, and then they will go and access the resources on the backend, right? So that's how generally a typical environment works. But here, if you're thinking about the same solution in the Azure or any cloud platform, okay, so you'll have to kind of have multiple systems, number one, and you'll have to have multiple systems, and all these systems has to get exposed to the default port numbers. The default port numbers possibly like it can be 3389 if you are using Windows jump box, and if you are using Linux jump box, you might have to open the uh, uh, 22 port number, right, based on your operating system configuration. So if you have changed the port number, well and good, you can slightly tweak and improve the security there. But so this has a lot of limitation, right? So once you have set up all these jump servers, you need to maintain this operating system. You need to kind of purchase the license for this operating system, and also you need public IP interface for all these what do you call the jump servers, and also you need to kind of very careful about how to open the port, or to which range you need to open the port, and also you have to configure the network security group. There is a lot of complication in setting up the similar jump server environment in the cloud. So I would say management of servers and maintenance of OS in terms of patching, monitoring, and availability, redundancy, and so on. You have to take care of redundancy aspect by creating multiple systems. And also you need to manage the network security group, and you need to kind of take care of the network ports which are vulnerable, because the default network ports like 3389 and 22, these are the ports which are susceptible, or which are very common exploits, or maybe like they are very vulnerable to any brute force attack, the default ports. If you're changing the default port number, then that's fine, but still there is a lot of challenge in using the default port. So how we can avoid all these complications, or how we can enhance the security in accessing the system? So Microsoft Azure has given a solution called Bastion solution, which can simplify all these things. Okay, so instead of having multiple servers, multiple machines to manage, they provide you a very beautiful concept. I can see if there is a diagram here. Okay, so they are giving us a kind of Azure Bastion, which will reside in a separate subnet called Azure Bastion subnet. In order to have the Azure Bastion concept, we need to have separate subnet, like just like yesterday for the gateway devices, we created a subnet called gateway subnet. And for Azure Bastion, we need to create a subnet called Azure Bastion subnet. We'll see how to do that, and maybe let's take it further from there. First thing is you need to create a subnet just for the Azure Bastion machine. So no other machine should be residing in the subnet. If you're creating a subnet specifically for gateway or Azure Bastion or whatever purpose, it has to be intended for only those resources. You should not create any other resources in that particular subnet. That's the best practice you should always follow. So let's maybe log into the portal, and then we'll see how to create a separate subnet for that. Either okay, let's do one thing. Okay, let's go to virtual network. So maybe we can create the Bastion subnet in East US Spoke VNet 01. So here I'll go to the subnets, and then I'll go and create a normal subnet. And here you should name that as Azure Bastion subnet. Either you can create it on your own, or you can also do one more thing. I can go to my virtual machine here. Okay, I can go to my systems, and on the system, I can just go here and say under the connection option, go to the drop down and you can select Bastion. And if the Bastion is not currently set up, it will ask us to deploy the Bastion or configure it manually. So you have two options. Let's understand both the options. So I'll just copy paste this content there. Okay, we'll just copy paste this. We'll refer to that later. And if you want to create a Bastion, it needs a specific virtual network. It needs a public IP address in that particular network, and it also creates a name for it. So let's try and deploy the Bastion automatically. Let's see what happens. So it's going and adding a subnet automatically called Azure Bastion subnet. If you look at here, it has created a subnet now, and it is creating a new Bastion host, meaning it is creating a new system that will act as a Bastion. So you can either do it
Stan,
through the connect. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just a quick question. So
Yeah.
VM001 is going to be converted as a Bastion server, or it's going
No,
to create a separate?
no, it's going to create a separate Bastion system. VM001 is the system which runs the actual workload on the backend. So VM001 will continue to act as one of the Azure VM. So Azure Bastion is a kind of protected machine where you will not have access to manage a lot of things. So either you can create a Bastion by going to this option directly, or you can go to operations and select the Bastion and you can deploy the Bastion. So I'll give me a minute, Ganesh, you will get to understand. But to answer your question, no, VM001 will not get converted. VM001 will be accessed through the Bastion moving forward. After the Bastion is set up, you will be able to access the VM001 through the Bastion host or through the Bastion system. So see, until now, how we are accessing all these machines, the VM001 or any machines for that particular matter, how we are accessing it, we are going to RDP protocol and we are putting together the port there, and we are entering the IP address and we are connecting to them. That's the way we have been doing. Even if it is a Linux machine, we have been accessing it through PuTTY or SSH client or even browser-based option is there, but still we have been using a additional option to connect to it. But let me do one thing. So see, just to avoid the confusion here, I'll also go and create one more system. So this system is in which subnet here? This is in, okay, hub VNet, fine. Okay, so I'll go and create one more VM or Linux VM possibly, because we have got all Windows. We'll also have one Linux for testing purpose. Okay, I'll create it in the same, where is that? Okay, we don't have a separate resource group, but I'll create it in here only. So I'll call it as Linux VM001. Okay, the Bastion is getting created on the back end. Okay, I'm not disturbing that, but I'm just trying to create additional VMs so that this can be managed through the Bastion. Okay, yeah, this is fine. Okay, there is no other option. Okay, let me review and create it. Okay, so once after this VM is created, I'll explain how that works. And maybe to be clear for your question, Ganesh, so you need not go and manage the Bastion the way that I went and created. Oh, sorry. The way that I went and created. Instead, you can directly go to the top and you can type, sorry, not here, type Bastions and you can start creating Bastions from here. Okay, so this is the resource that I just created. Okay, it's not the VM001. Instead, we can go and create a Bastion based on your requirement. Okay, I'll explain the different options that are available here. I'm not converting the VM001. So this is the new Bastion host that has got created. Okay, the option that I took or the method, the step that I took is something through that particular VM. So you need not go there. Instead, you can go to the Bastion and you can start creating it from here only. That will avoid a lot of confusion. Yeah. So the reason I did that, I want to manage some of the VMs that resides in the existing subnet or existing VNet. Okay, so that VM was in one of the VNet. If I have created it in Spoke VNet, then I should have created additional VMs to manage it. But yeah, so that's the reason I've created it. And it takes more time. You can check the provisioning state here. It takes a few minutes. And let's wait for the other VM here. I think Linux VM will get created quickly. Okay, the VM001 remains untouched. Okay, it is still there and it's running. There is no changes to that. Okay, let me quickly explain the theoretical part. See, ideally, if you want to connect to any of the VMs on the backend, so what you are doing, you are connecting to the jump server first, number one hop, and this jump server, you are connecting using 22 port or 3389 port based on the operating system. And from this jump server or the terminal server, you log into the backend systems. That is the thing that you have been doing. So you have to ideally open 3389 port here and based on your terminal server operating system, and again you are taking remote of the system. If it is Windows, you are taking 3389 and again 22. There is a couple of hops here, and also you are exposing these systems to open internet. So the systems, the terminal servers are open to any general public, or it's open to all the internet users. So that's the one more challenge here. So now with the Azure Bastion concept, we don't open any RDP port or 22 port. So terminal servers port are not at all open. So RDP and SSH ports are not exposed to internet. Then how we are connecting to them? I'll give you the method. I'll show you the method how we are going to connect to it. So let's see if the bastions are ready. Okay, it succeeded. Okay, suppose if I want to connect to this virtual machine 001, now I can just click this and then go on connect and then select Bastion. It will open up the name of the, when it will open up the window and it will ask for the username and password. Either I can directly open it in the same window, or I can just open it in a new window. Better I'll open it in a new window. See, it will open up a new browser window and it will show me the console, just like your VMware or your on-premises virtualization platform. It will allow me to kind of open here, and you can see that it is extremely fast. Okay, so unlike your what do you call RDP session, this one will be super fast. You can just go and manage things. You can make changes very quickly. And the important thing is you are not opening 3389 port for the entire internet facing users. You can just have only what do you call the browser based, and only the Bastion will be able to connect from here. So I'll just changing it. I want to use it for some other lab. So I'll just call it as East US VM. Okay, let me close this. Okay, so similarly, if you want to access Linux VM, you can just go to the Linux VM here, select that Linux VM and go to the option, select the Bastion, and you will be able to connect. I'll say stan and password.
This credential is the one which you have entered while creating the VM?
Correct, yeah. This is the VM login credential, yes. See, I can able to log into the Linux window, Linux machine, and sorry, I typed it wrong. So it works much faster compared to the RDP session. So ideally, what we are doing is we are completely eliminating the in-between jump server requirement. Instead, Microsoft is giving us an option called Bastion. You can land into the Bastion using 443 port. That is very important. We are only allowing transport layer security, HTTPS port for connection to the Bastion, because like we are connecting through the browser only. We are using 443 port for connection, number one. Only 443 port is needed to connect, and by default everyone knows, right? HTTPS are generally allowed in all the environment. HTTP plus SSL or HTTP plus transport layer security, it's generally allowed. HTTPS port are generally allowed. Only HTTPS port need to be open. So these port need not be open on the gem servers or on the Bastion servers. Now you are able to log into the Bastion, and from there you are accessing all these backend systems using the private IP, using the required protocol here. Okay, we are not exposing these systems to outside world. Instead, if you look at the configuration settings here, if I go to networking, you will start seeing a rule here. So let me show you that. If I go to my virtual network, we created the Bastion here, right? If you go to the subnets, you can start seeing that it has created a Azure Bastion subnet with 62 IP address range. Okay, and it has also created a route table for connectivity. Okay, so it is managed by Azure platform, so we don't manage it. But if in case you need to manage it, you can also create it. I'll show you how to create those routes actually. But if you look at here for the Bastion purpose, it has created a separate subnet and it has created a separate device also in that. And how to manage this device, go to the device and you will be able to see what are the current sessions that are going on through the Bastion. So I've connected to Linux and Windows, right? I'll be able to see that here. So this first connection is going to Linux VM and the second connection I can see it is going to VM001. And I've used STAN, and on the back end it is using RDP port, and the target IP address is the private IP address. There is no more need for the VMs to be exposed in the public IP address. So the VMs on the back end doesn't need public IP address at all, because we are connecting to the VM using Bastion, and from the Bastion it always connects using the private IP only. VMs does not need to have public IP address. Okay, so that's what I'm highlighting here. So all the backend machines, the VM, Windows VM, Linux VM, all these things will be accessed using private IP, and you can see that very much here, right? This is the target IP it is using to connect, and it is using the protocol from the Bastion. And if I want to terminate some of the connection, I can just say I don't want to connect this session, and I can just delete it. If I go here, the sessions will be terminated. So you can see the network connection to the Bastion stable, and I mean it says, and I can, even if I enter it, it won't work because I have deleted the session. So you have to reconnect, then only you will be able to activate that. Okay, and similarly, if you want to look at some logs, or if you want to verify if there is any issue from this particular machine to the Bastion, you can use the network watcher troubleshooting, connection troubleshooting, which can help you to understand what is happening from the Bastion to the backend VM and so on. Okay, this is a very good useful concept which Microsoft has given through their platform, and many organizations are making best use of it. Okay, so I'll go through the theoretical part now. So Azure Bastion service is a new fully managed, fully platform managed PaaS service, meaning you don't manage the operating system of this, you don't manage any kind of configuration settings within that. See, the more you give access to any of the machine, people will start installing roles, feature which is not really required on the front end machine, on the gem server. Okay, so that's one thing that Microsoft is trying to avoid: unnecessary modification or unnecessary if someone is going and adding some SQL management studio or whatever client, so it is going to add up more resources and unnecessary memory issues, and all those things will come here, right? So Microsoft is not giving us access. It is a fully managed platform PaaS service, meaning you don't have access to the virtual machine. You just connect to that VM as a kind of jump host or a kind of a hop. Okay, and any of the machine on the back end, whatever the VM001 or the Linux machine, it doesn't need to get exposed on the public IP. It has to be accessible via the Azure Bastion. And in order to use this particular solution, you need two credential. One, you should have access to your Azure portal, number one. So I have logged in with my credential to the Azure portal. Then you need to have the credential of the machine that you are connecting from the Bastion. There are two credentials still needed. Okay, so coming back here. And again, the challenge here is you need to have Azure Bastion deployed per virtual network. Generally, what we do is we go and deploy it in the hub VNet, meaning you'll have it on the front end VNet, and from there you will be able to connect to the backend system. Okay, either using a remote gateway option or either using the gateway transit option enabled. So once you are landed into the Azure virtual network, from there you will be able to connect to backend systems. Okay, so I mean, it's Azure Bastion cannot be created per subscription. It's created per VNet. Okay, that's the important thing you need to understand. If you're solutioning, just solution it for the front end hub VNet only. Just create a Bastion on the front hub VNet, and from there, once after you land into the Azure platform, then you can connect to any other machines, whatever you need. Okay, and any questions from anyone so far? This is very important. Okay, so all the customers are deploying this. Yeah.
Yes, Dan. So
Yeah.
creating the Bastion host
Mhm.
will provide the connectivity to all the virtual networks across whatever we have in the Azure platform, or it's specific to any specific VNet.
Okay, so it's specific to the VNet. That's what I told, right? So this is only for the Bastion is only for the hub VNet. But what you can do is when you go and create a peering on this particular VNet, there are two options which you can think about. Okay, so when I add the peering here, there are two options here, right? Use this virtual network gateway or as a route server, meaning this can forward the traffic to the backend system. Okay, so if you are enabling this particular setting when you are creating a peering to all the backend VNets, automatically all the backend VNets will be exposed to this particular hub VNet. So which means you can be able to connect to the backend systems using this. It will act as a routing gateway. Okay, generally we'll create it only for the hub VNet, but if in case there is a particular department which needs access to a particular backend VNet, you can also create a separate bastion for them. Okay, it's not that we cannot do it, but in generally we cannot. People will not go and complicate things by creating too many Bastion environment. They will have Bastion only on the front end. See, generally, like what we do in on-premises, or sorry, in without the Bastion concept, you will have a kind of perimeter network, or they call it as DMZ network. And in that DMZ network, we'll go and create the jump servers, or we'll go and deploy the terminal servers. Similarly, to avoid the threat or to avoid the exposure of your backend environment, we generally go and create it only in the hub VNet or the perimeter DMZ VNet. Okay, so that even after you do all these things, this Bastion system, the the most important thing is it is not getting exposed to the default port numbers 3389 or 29 22. It's only exposed through the HTTPS. HTTPS is generally wide open, right? So in most of the organization, HTTPS are mostly used. So they are connecting using only TLS, Transport Layer Security Protocol, which means it is very, very safe. And the first thing is the user has to log into Azure portal. If they don't have Azure portal access, then nothing can be done. Okay, the first thing they need to log into Azure portal, and from there they are logging into the Bastion. There are two levels of credential authentication, plus it's all happening through HTTPS, Transport Layer Security. Okay, I'll get you more understanding here. See, let's go through this. See, for example, in this is the general concept that we have, right? In if you are not having a Bastion concept, you will have the internet accessible to the jumbos. The jump server will be accessible for the entire internet. That's how we have been connecting to the jump host as on today, right? Before the Bastion concept, we have been using the RDP port or SSH port to connect to the jump box, and from the jump box we have been accessing all the backend systems, either the database server or the application or the domain controllers or whatever it is. We have been accessing it just through that method, and this particular jump box are exposed to the general public using RDP and SSH port. So any malicious attack can happen here. So what Microsoft is overcoming here, instead of having the jump host or management subnet for your jump server, they have completely eliminated this, and they have started giving you a service called Azure Bastion service or Azure Bastion network, which will have only the Bastion system, and none of the other roles will be enabled in that. And it is only getting exposed through HTTPS port. It doesn't open any kind of RDP or SSH port, which are default port, and it is vulnerable, right? It is malicious for a lot of attacks. So they are not opening this particular port on the Bastion server. But if in case you need some kind of specific tools for managing, or if in case you want to have some kind of client and other things to manage your database or whatever, you can have separate management systems just for that purpose, instead of complicating the jump box usage for just remote desktop or for the support team. Only for the team that needs some kind of software, you can have specific virtual machines created, and that too you can access those management machines through the Bastion. Instead of directly exposing these management stations to the internet, you can expose them only to the Bastion subnet, so that the user can log into the portal, then Bastion, then on the management session, and maybe if they want to connect using SQL Management Studio or whatever application, Citrix or whatever, they can manage from this particular jump box to the backend system. If they want to do some kind of Azure AD Connect configuration or whatever they want to do, they can do it this way. Okay, so we are kind of completely eliminating the exposure of the default port. we are avoiding the brute force attack from happening. Okay, so that's the primary important thing that we get benefited out of this particular setup. Is it clear now?
Yeah, Stan, is there any
Yeah,
pricing involved on this?
yeah, definitely. It's the pricing is definitely involved. Okay, so I'll just help you with that. Okay, so these are the advantages. Okay, so you don't have to have RDP and SSH directly on the SSH portal, and everything works for transport layer security, and no public IP is needed on the backend VM, and we don't have to manage the NSGs, network security group, and we are also avoiding the systems getting exposed to the internet, right? So let's talk about the pricing. Any questions from anyone else?
Yes, Stan,
Yeah,
in
go
this
ahead.
case, for a project, if 10 users are assigned, so 10
Mm,
user need to log into Azure portal, and then all the 10 user will be using the PaaS service.
correct. Yeah, all the
Okay.
10 users should have
So,
to log into the Bastion and then they will be using it, correct?
okay. So number of users when they are increasing, then obviously the cost also, which
No,
will
now
impact the
pricing I'll
project, right?
explain. Pricing I'll explain. So pricing is depends on little different parameters here. So it depends on what we call the number of bastions that we use, the amount of data that we transfer, and it based on what kind of bastion service we are using. There are two categories. I'll come to that part.
Okay, fine, Stan.
Yeah,
Scan.
yeah,
So this Bastion will be working within the same subnet. I mean, the devices which are
same
falls in
VNet.
the same subnet will be, yeah.
It is for a specific virtual network.
Okay, okay, got it.
Yeah,
But Stan, you mentioned, right, when we are enabling the network peering, then with the same
correct.
bastion, we will be able to
Yeah,
connect the
we'll be
other.
able to connect. Correct, correct, correct. That is possible. Okay, so solutioning can be done, but the question is more towards what is the scope of the Bastion, right? Generally, the scope of Bastion is targeted for a virtual network. Generally, the Bastions are tied to a subnet. Sorry, tied to a
Okay.
virtual network, VNet. Yeah. Okay, so let's
Okay.
talk about the pricing here. So pricing aspect depends on a couple of things. So there is a kind of SKU there also. There is a basic and standard SKU, and you also have to pay for data transfer rates through the outbound, and there is also auto scaling there. Okay, scaling unit meaning it can if you are increasing the number of bastion and if you are looking if it is creating more bastion, then automatically it will go and add up more cost. So these are the three parameters that is going to uh, have an impact. Okay, let me just give you some more information here.
Stan, I have a doubt.
Yeah. Hmm.
So this Bastion process will only allow for specific IP based on the subnet we provide, right? Like limited IP will be provided. So in this scenario would work for IT people who are wants to access the server whenever and wherever they wanted to
Very true.
access and maintain.
Exactly. That is true.
How
So,
about
mm,
Yeah, how about the non-IT people like end users? We have multiple projects in an organization, so they'll
mhm.
be able to connect, right? So, what is the solution for DAS, like desktop as a service?
Okay.
Because
So,
this pricing
yeah,
in
no,
this.
yeah, I got it. I got it. Okay. See, jump servers are generally used by whom?
Yeah,
Support
IT
team
people,
or end
sorry,
users?
support team,
Yeah,
support team.
IT professionals, right? Or IT support teams. So
Yes.
why end user need to access these systems?
Yeah, that's why we don't want end users to access
Correct.
this way because we have pricing and everything. How about the end
Right.
users? Like if we have a private
No, end
cloud as a
users will access only
VMware.
the service, right? They will be accessing the web application or application or whatever, like which is running on the system. So that will be exposed through the respective ports, the application specific port.
Yeah,
We are not going
if
to open
we
it
have
through the jump server.
Windows 10 or Windows 7, like in a
Mhm,
VMware private cloud, we have Horizon client, right? So they will
mhm,
connect to the client and they will be able to access the respective applications or as well as the machines
mhm.
that has been assigned to them. So
Yeah,
how about that process in here? So
yeah,
if
that is
there is
different.
a
That
project,
is different. That is
hmm,
different. We have Azure Virtual Desktop for Horizon actually.
oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, it is very much
Yes, so
similar.
there are
It is very
end
much
users.
similar to Bastion, but this is for the end users. End users need desktop. Okay, for example, if
Yeah,
they
yeah,
manage,
that's
if they
what I
want
mean.
to manage application and so on, they need to have a virtual desktop rather than a Bastion. So if you are talking about
Okay.
end users looking for some VDI solution or
Yes.
something similar to your Horizon client, then enable Azure Virtual Desktop, not the Bastion for them.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Yeah,
Stanley, one more clarification.
yeah.
So sometimes we require a jump session in order to transfer the file into the our environment. Okay.
Mhm.
So in that could be the case, we require only the desktop missions, right? Maybe this Bastion
No,
could not
so
be.
generally people will have one more level of in-between system just for the management purpose. See, whatever you are saying, it's a management activity, meaning you want to transfer some data, or you want to move some information, or you want to manage using some client or whatever. So we generally, some people, irrespective of all these solution, they will have one or two jump servers. Okay, they will eradicate the exposure of the jump server to the public internet. That is the primary thing of intention of Bastion. And the second intention is to not allow making a lot of changes on the Bastion system, because it is intended for giving you a terminal, or just giving you a jump option to get inside the environment. And people overload it, and then at the end, the IT support team will start troubleshooting CPU issues, memory issues, overload issues on the Bastion systems, which is ideally not a good practice actually. So if in case you have something, you can ask the business to approve that, and you
Okay.
get separate licenses and have a separate machine for that activity.
Okay. Got it. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, 1 minute. Yeah, so licensing is based on the type of tier you are selecting. Okay, and I'll just these are the three aspects which will change the cost. The number one aspect is the licensing which you are choosing, whether it's a kind of basic SKU or standard SKU, and based on that, the pricing is going to differ. And again, data that is getting transferred through the Bastion, the data transfer outside of a region, it's going to be chargeable. Then the last one is the number of bastions which are getting created. Okay, so if the load is very high, if the number of users are connecting more, automatically it will go and spin up more Bastion systems to accommodate the connections, and it will increase the cost for you. Okay, so there are some aspects. Let me just go on. So now, see, it is in basic tier. If I go and change it to standard tier, then the pricing will change. Okay, and it's based on this SKU type, basic or standard. And you can also go and increase the number of Bastion systems. Currently, I've given only 2. If I want to give more, you can also go and increase it and apply the settings. Okay, so you can go and increase up to 50 Bastion systems as per your requirement. But that is very huge. Okay, so 2 is okay for a small environment. For a mid-size, maybe 3 or 4 is fine. But for a very large number of environment, you can go and increase the number of active instances that can be added. But you need to have a control on that. Otherwise, it's going to be challenging. Okay, when there is a number of users adding up, or number of concurrent sessions getting increased, because I know people will open it, and then they will start opening one more browser session. People have the habit of not closing the session or terminating the session properly. So if they continue to do that, then it's going to be very problematic. So what is the question? There was someone, okay, how many users? Okay, so generally I think it is 25 concurrent session per Bastion. Okay, if it is Windows. Okay, let me just double check. Okay, just give me a second. I think it's 25 if I'm not wrong. Okay, so it can support up to 25, and more can be scaled. So, but the very basic thing, like the peering of the hub VNet and the spoke VNet, is supported in both basic and standard. That's the primary thing people will ask, whether both the SKU will support the peering. Yeah, so connecting to the target VMs using peered network is actually supported in both basic and the standard SKU. Okay, earlier it was not supported. It was people were asking to use standard, but then recently they have changed to include support in both of them. And again, you can access the Linux VM using both password and the private key method also. That's another advantage in Linux VM. It is available in both basic and the standard. And the scalability option, it's not there in basic. In basic, you'll get only 2 machines, or the host can be only 2. Here I have option to scale up to 50. Okay, the scalability option. Okay, and the next thing is specific custom inbound port. For example, if I want to customize the inbound port and all those things, then you need to go to standard. Okay, so this one not available here. This is available in this setup. Okay, I can just show you one more thing here. If I want to just change the native client support preview, there is a new feature that they have enabled. They are giving us the kind of admin control panel, which can help us to disable some of the Bastion host feature. They are just giving it in a preview now. This is not yet fully available. Okay, so let me apply that. If you only change to standard, you have the option to increase the instance count and decrease it. Okay, so now once after I do this, I can also show you that. And also for your question, Bala, like for file transfer is available in standard tier of Bastion. Okay, you can
Okay,
connect,
thanks, Sam.
yeah, saying RDP, SSH. See, even on let me just quickly show you that. So file transfer. Even with standard SKU, sorry, basic SKU itself, you have this option, meaning you have the option to kind of click this and you can copy paste, like a clipboard option is available. The text transfer is possible in the basic SKU itself, but if you want to do the data transfer or the file transfer, that is supported only in standard. Okay, I just want to make sure that you guys understand it. Okay, so clipboard is different, file transfer is different. File transfer is actually transferring a complete file, but clipboard option is available in both the basic and standard. Clipboard meaning if you want to execute some command, or if you want to copy some line items from here to here, you can just paste it here, and from here you can copy and paste it inside the system. Okay, so since we have changed that tier, it is going and reconnecting. Okay, I can just close this, and now let me go back one step. I don't know, wait for some time. It's applying changes still. Okay, it's still updating. Don't go away. But this is very important thing that every customer has been looking for, and Microsoft brought this mid of last year, or maybe late last year. These options were made available. So only thing is you need to have a active subscription, and after connecting to the subscription using your Azure account, then you'll be able to make use of the Bastion systems. Okay, so let's give it 2 or 3 minutes, and meanwhile I'll just give you some important things, like you need an active subscription in Azure in order to connect to it, and also you need a Azure account in order to use this Azure Bastion concept, and you need to have a specific subnet for this particular Bastion subnet. Generally you should have /26 or larger. Okay, so /26 is minimum, but people generally use /27 as a common best practice as per the design. Okay, because like you need to have multiple systems, at least 60, to have scalability up to 50 bastions, right? So that is very important. Okay, let's see now. Okay, it's changed, fine. Okay, let's close this. Let's try to reconnect. Go to the VMs. Okay, let me go to the operations option here. Okay, it's still in updating. So here is where you can identify the option whether there are some changes going on. Okay, you should not make anything now. I mean, it's late. And I already copied this, but I missed to explain it. The important thing is your VM is going to be very, very lightweight. The Azure Bastion, it's going to be very, very lightweight. And you know, right, we are not loading up unwanted things, and it is actually browser-based connectivity. We are not using tools like remote desktop protocol, or we are not using PuTTY or other tools. It's like browser-based, and it is very, very lightweight. And you'll be you are not exposing the backend system's public IP address. That is the most important thing that we are doing as part of this. Okay, Control X. Okay, let's give it a second, a minute. Any other questions from anyone on this particular thing?
So Stan, you are telling about the file copying, right? So text copying and then file copying. So we are connecting our Azure from our laptop, right? So in both the basic and standard, from our laptop to the end VM, the file transfer is possible, or we need to transfer first to the Bastion, from Bastion to the VM.
Yeah, it depends on the connectivity setup, right? If you have routing enabled directly to the backend systems, if you are having a network connection, then you can directly copy the content to the backend systems. If you have VPN option, or if you have private connection already enabled, you don't have to go through the Bastion, which is again unnecessarily going to increase the latency. But for Bala's question, some people will log into the jump server and do some kind of file copy and all those things. So Microsoft has enabled that option in the Bastion concept. But clipboard is very simple, right? If you want to execute some command, or if I want to copy certain things and do it, then you can use the clipboard option only to copy the text, actually, not the entire file. Clipboard option is available in the basic itself, the basic Bastion option itself. Okay, just I'll show you something. Okay, just give me a minute. It's getting updated. Maybe I'll show you in a couple of minutes. Any other questions from anyone else?
Yeah. Yes, Stanley.
Yeah, go ahead.
See, this is a valid or invalid. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay.
See, actually, you mentioned like you have a concurrent user connect account 25 sessions. You mentioned like. So, do you have any option like sudo is to uh, uh, to connect the Azure account, so that
Yeah, so I
the
was
service
referring
accounts to
to,
be added
yeah, yeah.
multiple sessions can
I
be
was
possible.
referring to I was referring to primarily this one, what I call the Windows connection, not for the Linux. Linux is a multi-user operating system by default, and I think it can support at least double or triple the time of connections as that of Windows on Linux. If your question was targeted towards Linux, then I think it should support at least 50 to 75 connections minimum through one Bastion.
Okay, so there is
Yeah.
no sudo concept on that.
Sudo, yeah, see, you don't have access to jump inside the Bastion. Rather, you are getting connection directly to the backend system, right? And after connecting to the backend system, if you have the settings enabled in your sudoers file, or if you have enabled permission for doing a sudo using your normal account to admin account or root account, then it will work as normal as that. Okay, this is not making any difference on the backend systems. If you have sudoers permission, and if you have access to do that, you will be able to do that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Let me just see. Okay, then let's do one thing. I don't know, it takes more time. Okay, meanwhile, I'll just try to get a couple of machines enabled here. So next topic is going to be very interesting, the traffic manager topic. I think one of you asked about this traffic manager when we were discussing load balancer concept. So if I have systems on different region or different location, how do we kind of handle it, right? How to handle the traffic? So that is what we are going to quickly check after this one, after the Bastion. So meanwhile, I'll just prepare that systems. So this VM is in central India. Okay, and the other VM which we connected earlier, it is in East US. So I will say this is in central India. Okay, don't worry about it. Let me just, I think I can better type it. Okay, so this is in central India. Okay, so let me save this.
Hello, Stanley, we can't hear you. No. Is others are able to hear Stanley?